The three Zephyrian scout ships moved through space like gentle sea creatures floating in an endless ocean. Their hulls glowed with soft blue light that pulsed in slow rhythms, creating patterns that would have been beautiful to human eyes. Commander Keithavar stood in the center of his ship's bridge, watching the stars through the clear dome above his head. His tall, slender frame was typical of his species, with pale skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in the ship's gentle lighting. The Kepler 442 system had been on their survey list for months now. It was just another routine patrol, the kind of mission that Keithavar had done hundreds of times before. The Zephyrians were known throughout their part of the galaxy as peaceful explorers and diplomats. They had never encountered a hostile species in all their centuries of space travel. War was something they had read about in ancient histories, not something that existed in their modern world. "Commander, I am detecting something unusual," said Science Officer Ylthara from her station near the back of the bridge. Her voice carried the musical quality that all Zephyrians possessed, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. She was younger than Keithavar, with the bright curiosity that marked the best scientists of their kind. Keithavar turned toward her, his large eyes reflecting the soft light from her console. "What kind of unusual, Ylthara?" "There is an energy signature near the fourth planet. It is very large and very strange. I have never seen anything like it in our databases." She touched her console with graceful fingers, bringing up a display that showed dancing lines of energy readings. "The pattern suggests something artificial, but the power output is enormous." The other bridge crew members looked up from their stations with interest. Navigation Officer Zilkent floated closer to examine the readings, his movements smooth and effortless in the low-gravity environment that Zephyrians preferred. "Could it be a natural phenomenon? Perhaps some kind of stellar activity we have not encountered before?" Ylthara shook her head, causing the small decorative crystals in her hair to chime softly. "No, the patterns are too regular, too organized. This is definitely artificial. Some kind of vessel, I think, but much larger than anything we have ever built." Keithavar felt a flutter of excitement in his chest. First contact with the new species was rare and precious. The Zephyrians had encountered 17 different intelligent species over the centuries, and each meeting had led to wonderful exchanges of knowledge and culture. Perhaps today would bring them a new friend among the stars. "How large are we talking about?" he asked, moving closer to Ylthara's station. "Based on the energy output and the spread of the signature, I estimate at least 2,000 meters in length, possibly more." Ylthara's voice carried a note of wonder. "Commander, this would be by far the largest artificial construct we have ever detected." The bridge fell silent for a moment as everyone absorbed this information. The largest Zephyrian ships were barely 300 meters long, and those were their massive colony vessels. A ship over 2,000 meters long was almost beyond their imagination. "Sir, should we inform the High Council?" asked Communications Officer Veltara from her position near the front of the bridge. Her duty was to maintain contact with their home fleet and report any significant discoveries. Keithavar considered this for a moment. "Not yet. Let us investigate further first. We should gather more information before we make any reports." He turned back to Ylthara. "Can you determine anything else about this vessel? What kind of technology are they using?" Ylthara worked at her console for several minutes, her fingers dancing across the controls as she refined her scans. "This is very strange, Commander. I am detecting electromagnetic emissions that seem quite primitive by our standards. Radio waves, basic radar pulses, simple digital communications. It is as if they are using technology that is centuries behind ours. But their ship is much larger than anything we could build," pointed out Zilkent. "How could a less advanced species construct something so massive?" "Perhaps they simply chose a different path of development," suggested Veltara. "Maybe they focused on building large ships instead of advancing their electronics and sensors." Keithavar nodded thoughtfully. This made sense to him. The Zephyrians had always believed that there were many different ways to reach the stars. Some species might choose brute force and massive engineering over the elegant solutions that his people preferred. "Commander, I am also detecting that the vessel appears to be conducting some kind of operations near an asteroid field," Ylthara reported. "The energy readings are fluctuating in patterns that suggest active systems." "They might be mining," suggested Zilkent. "A ship that large would require enormous amounts of resources to maintain." Keithavar made his decision. "Set course for the fourth planet, but maintain a safe distance. I want to observe this vessel and its activities before we make contact." If they are indeed a less advanced species, we should be careful not to frighten them with our sudden appearance. The 3 scout ships changed direction smoothly, their biomechanical engines producing no visible exhaust or energy signature that might alert the mysterious vessel to their approach. Zephyrian technology was designed to work in harmony with natural forces, making their ships nearly invisible to most forms of detection. As they drew closer to the 4th planet, the mysterious energy signature grew stronger and more complex. Ylthara continued to refine her readings, building a clearer picture of what they were approaching. Commander, the vessel appears to be maintaining position near a large asteroid cluster. The energy fluctuations are becoming more pronounced. I think they may be preparing for some kind of major operation. Kethavar felt his excitement growing. This was turning into one of the most interesting discoveries of his career. How close can we get without being detected? There is a small moon on the far side of the asteroid field. If we position ourselves behind it, we should be able to observe without being seen. Excellent. Take us there, Zilkand. And everyone, prepare your recording equipment. The High Council will want to see everything we discover about this new species. The 3 Zephyrian ships slipped silently toward the small moon, their crews filled with anticipation and wonder. None of them could imagine that what they were about to witness would change everything they thought they knew about the universe. None of them could guess that their peaceful mission of exploration was about to turn into something that would shake their entire civilization to its core. Behind the safety of the small moon, they prepared to observe what they believed would be a simple mining operation by a less advanced but interesting new species. They had no idea that they were about to get their first glimpse of human military technology, and that the sight would haunt their dreams for years to come. The 3 Zephyrian scout ships moved slowly around the edge of the small moon, their sensors reaching out carefully toward the massive energy signature on the other side. Commander Kethavar held his breath as the first visual images began to appear on the main display screen. What he saw made his legs feel weak and his heart skip several beats. The human warship USS Liberty hung in space like a nightmare made real. Its dark metal hull stretched endlessly before them, over 2 kilometers of angular surfaces and aggressive lines that spoke of violence and death. The ship looked nothing like the graceful curves and organic shapes that Zephyrians used in their designs. This vessel appeared to be built by a species that understood war in ways that peaceful minds could barely comprehend. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty, completely unaware that alien eyes were watching his every move. He was a tall man with graying hair and calm eyes that had seen many years of space travel. His uniform was crisp and professional, marked with the insignia of Earth's deep space exploration fleet. To him, this was just another routine day conducting necessary maintenance on his ship's systems. All stations report ready for weapons calibration. Captain, said Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes from her position at the tactical station. She was younger than Morrison, with short brown hair and the precise movements of someone who had spent years training with complex military systems. Her fingers moved across her controls with practiced efficiency. Morrison nodded and looked out at the asteroid field that stretched before them. Very good, Commander Hayes. Select a suitable target and begin the test sequence. I want all kinetic systems checked and verified before we continue deeper into this system. On their hidden position behind the moon, Science Officer Ylthara watched her instruments with growing horror. Commander, they are powering up some kind of weapon system. The energy readings are climbing to levels I have never seen before. Kethavar stared at the display showing the human ship. Even from this distance, he could see sections of the hull opening to reveal what could only be weapon ports. The ship bristled with more armaments than he had thought possible to mount on a single vessel. How many weapons does that ship carry? I am counting at least 40 major weapon systems, Commander, and probably hundreds of smaller ones. The power requirements for all of those systems would drain our entire home fleet in minutes. Aboard the Liberty, Lieutenant Hayes selected a large asteroid roughly 1 kilometer in diameter as their test target. The asteroid was composed mostly of iron and rock, perfect for testing the penetration power of their kinetic accelerator cannons. Target acquired, Captain. Range is 15,000 kilometers. You may fire when ready, Commander. Hayes pressed the firing control and the Liberty's main guns spoke with a voice of thunder and destruction. The kinetic accelerator cannons hurled projectiles of dense metal at tremendous speed, each one moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The projectiles crossed the distance to the target asteroid in less than a second. The Zephyrians watched in absolute terror as the massive asteroid simply ceased to exist. One moment it was a solid chunk of rock and metal floating peacefully in space, and the next moment it was an expanding cloud of superheated plasma and debris. The weapons had not just destroyed the asteroid, they had completely vaporized it with such force that the explosion lit up space for thousands of kilometers in every direction. "By the ancient stars," whispered Navigation Officer Zil Kent, his voice barely audible, "they just destroyed a mountain with a single shot." Ilthara's hand shook as she tried to record the sensor readings. "Commander, the energy release from that weapon was equivalent to a small stellar flare. How is such power even possible?" Cathvar could not speak for several moments. His mind struggled to process what he had just witnessed. The Zephyrians had weapons of their own, but they were designed for defense against pirates and wild animals. They were tools meant to disable and capture, not weapons meant to completely obliterate their targets. What kind of species would build weapons capable of such total destruction? On the Liberty's bridge, Captain Morrison nodded with satisfaction as the test results appeared on his screens. "Excellent work, Commander Hayes. All systems appear to be functioning within normal parameters. Log the test as successful and prepare for the next calibration sequence." "Aye, Captain. Preparing particle beam array for testing." The human crew went about their work with casual efficiency, completely unaware that their routine weapons test had just traumatized an entire alien crew. To them, these were simply the tools necessary for deep space exploration in a universe that could be dangerous and unpredictable. Pirates, hostile wildlife, and dangerous cosmic phenomena all required appropriate defensive measures. But the Zephyrians saw something entirely different. They saw a species that had turned warfare into a science, that had built ships designed for nothing but destruction and conquest. The casual way the humans had obliterated the asteroid suggested that such massive displays of firepower were routine for them. "Commander, I am detecting 3 small objects moving around the edge of the moon," reported Lieutenant Hayes suddenly. Her sensors had finally detected the Zephyrian scout ships despite their stealth technology. They appear to be artificial constructs, possibly vessels of some kind. Morrison turned toward the tactical display with interest. "Unknown vessels? How long have they been there?" "Unknown, sir. They are using some kind of stealth technology that makes them difficult to detect. I am only picking them up now because they moved into a position where our sensors could get a clear reading." Captain Morrison considered this information carefully. First contact situations required delicate handling, according to the protocols established by Earth Command. "Any signs of hostile intent?" "Negative, sir. They appear to be maintaining position and observing us. No weapon signatures detected." "Interesting. Commander Hayes, power down our weapon systems and signal General Quarters stand down. I do not want to appear threatening to our visitors. Lieutenant Carter, prepare a standard mathematical greeting sequence for transmission." The Zephyrians watched in amazement as the massive human warship suddenly dimmed its weapon signatures and seemed to reduce its aggressive posture. But their relief was short-lived when they detected an incoming transmission from the human vessel. "Commander, they are sending us some kind of signal," reported Communications Officer Veltara, her voice filled with panic. "It appears to be a targeting lock of some kind." Cathvar felt his blood turn cold. The humans had detected them despite their best stealth technology, and now they were being targeted by weapons that could vaporize asteroids. "All ships, emergency retreat. Get us out of here immediately." The 3 Zephyrian scout ships broke from their hiding place behind the moon and began to flee as fast as their engines could carry them. Behind them, the massive human warship watched their retreat with sensors that could track them across vast distances. To the fleeing aliens, it seemed like the predator was deciding whether or not to give chase to its prey. The 3 Zephyrian scout ships raced away from the human warship as fast as their engines could push them. Commander Cathvar gripped the railing of his bridge so tightly that his knuckles turned white beneath his pale skin. Behind them, the massive human vessel remained motionless, watching their retreat with sensors that seemed to see everything. "Maximum speed." "Zilkent," Cathvar ordered, his musical voice now strained with fear. "Get us to the edge of this system as quickly as possible." Navigation Officer Zil Kent worked frantically at his controls, pushing their biomechanical engines beyond safe limits. "I am giving you everything we have, Commander, but that ship could easily catch us if it wanted to." Our top speed is nothing compared to the power signatures I am reading from their propulsion systems. Science Officer Yilthara continued to monitor the human vessel from her station, her hands trembling as she recorded everything their sensors could detect. Commander, I am analyzing the construction of that ship, and what I am finding terrifies me. The hull appears to be made from materials I cannot even identify. The armor plating alone must be several meters thick. What kind of weapons could require such heavy armor? Asked Communications Officer Valterra, her voice barely above a whisper. The kind that could destroy entire planets, Yilthara replied, her scientific training allowing her to make calculations that filled her with dread. Based on the energy output we witnessed, their main weapons could crack the crust of a world. The armor suggests they expect to face similar weapons in return. Kethavar felt sick to his stomach as he absorbed this information. The Zephyrians had never encountered a species that thought in terms of planetary destruction. Their own weapons were designed to disable small ships or scare away dangerous animals. The idea of building weapons capable of destroying worlds was beyond their understanding. And their computer systems? Yilthara continued, her voice growing more frightened with each word. The processing power required to coordinate all those weapons simultaneously is greater than our entire planetary computing network. They can track thousands of targets and fire hundreds of weapons at the same time. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Liberty, Captain Jake Morrison watched the retreating alien vessels with growing concern. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes monitored their flight path from her tactical station, while Communications Officer Lieutenant Ben Carter worked to refine the mathematical greeting they had transmitted. Captain, the alien vessels appear to be fleeing at maximum speed, Hayes reported. They are pushing their engines well beyond normal operational parameters. Morrison frowned as he studied the tactical display. That seems like an extreme reaction to a simple greeting. Lieutenant Carter, are you certain our transmission was properly formatted according to first contact protocols? Yes, sir. Standard mathematical progression, prime numbers, and basic geometric relationships. Nothing that should be interpreted as threatening. Carter looked puzzled as he reviewed his work. Perhaps their communications technology operates on different principles than we assumed. Sir, should we pursue them? Hayes asked. We could easily catch up to them and attempt another contact. No, absolutely not, Morrison replied firmly. The last thing we want to do is chase ships that are clearly trying to get away from us. That would only confirm whatever fears are driving their retreat. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the ship's chief xenobiologist, spoke up from her station near the science console. Captain, based on their ship designs and flight patterns, I believe we may be dealing with a peaceful species that has never encountered military technology like ours. Their vessels appear to be built for exploration and research, not combat. That would explain their reaction to our weapons test, Morrison mused. They may have never seen destructive capability on that scale before. Back on the fleeing Zephyrian ships, disaster struck without warning. The lead scout vessel, pushed beyond its design limits, suffered a catastrophic failure in its navigation system. Sparks flew from Zilkent's console as the biomechanical components overloaded and began to shut down. Commander, I am losing navigation control, Zilkent shouted over the sound of alarms. The engines are not responding properly. The scout ship began to tumble out of control, its trajectory carrying it toward the gravitational field of the fourth planet. Without working engines, the small vessel would be pulled into the atmosphere and destroyed. Emergency power to engines, Kethavar ordered, but it was too late. The damage was too severe to repair quickly, and they were falling toward the planet below. Aboard the Liberty, Hayes detected the alien ship's distress immediately. Captain, one of the alien vessels appears to be in trouble. They are falling toward the planet and their engine signatures have disappeared. Morrison did not hesitate. All hands prepare for rescue operations. Launch shuttles 1 and 2 with full emergency equipment. We have beings in distress. Sir, they were fleeing from us, Hayes pointed out. They may interpret a rescue attempt as an attack. I do not care what they think of us right now, Morrison replied with determination. We are not going to watch intelligent beings die when we have the power to save them. Launch the shuttles. Commander Alex Turner led the rescue mission, piloting his shuttle toward the tumbling alien vessel with skill and precision. His co-pilot, Lieutenant Sarah Williams, worked to establish some kind of communication with the distressed ship. Unknown vessel. This is Earth shuttlecraft offering assistance. Please respond if you can hear this transmission. On the Zephyrian ship, Communications Officer Veltara detected the incoming human transmission and nearly fainted with terror. "Commander, the humans are sending us another message. They are closing in on our position." Kethavar watched his tactical display as the human rescue shuttles approached. To his frightened mind, they looked like attack craft closing in for the kill. The shuttles were angular and military in design, nothing like the elegant rescue vessels that Zephyrians would use. "They are not trying to help us," he said with certainty. "They are coming to capture us or finish us off. A species with weapons like theirs would not show mercy to strangers." The rescue attempt continued despite the lack of response from the alien vessel. Turner's shuttle deployed emergency force fields around the tumbling ship to slow its descent toward the planet. Working together, the two human shuttles managed to halt the alien vessel's fall and begin towing it to safety. But the Zephyrians interpreted these actions through the lens of their terror. They saw the force fields as some kind of capture beams, and the towing operation as proof that they were being taken prisoner by a species of warriors. Every helpful action by the humans only confirmed their worst fears about what kind of beings they had encountered. When the rescue was complete, and the alien ship was safely stabilized in orbit, the human shuttles withdrew to give their passengers space. Turner transmitted one final message offering continued assistance and providing coordinates where help could be found if needed. To the humans, this was simply the right thing to do when encountering beings in distress. To the Zephyrians, it was proof that they had barely escaped capture by the most dangerous species they had ever encountered. The misunderstanding was now complete, and it would soon spread fear throughout their entire civilization. The damaged Zephyrian scout ship limped through space toward their home territory, its hull scarred and its crew traumatized by what they had witnessed. Commander Kethavar sat in his command chair, staring at the recordings that would soon shake his entire civilization to its core. Every few minutes he would replay the moment when the human weapons had turned a kilometer-wide asteroid into glowing plasma, and each time the sight filled him with fresh terror. "How long until we reach the High Council chambers?" he asked Navigation Officer Zilkent, whose hands still shook from their near-death experience. 18 hours at current speed, Commander. The damage to our engines prevents us from traveling any faster." Zilkent's voice carried the exhaustion of someone who had pushed his ship beyond all safe limits. "I have transmitted our emergency codes ahead of us. The High Council will be waiting." Science Officer Yilthera continued to analyze the data they had collected, and with each passing hour, her conclusions became more frightening. "Commander, I have been studying the construction details of that human vessel, and I believe we have encountered something far worse than we initially thought." "How could it possibly be worse?" asked Communications Officer Veltara, who had not slept since their escape. "The ship appears to be designed for extended combat operations in deep space. The armor is not just thick, it is composed of layers of different materials, each one designed to stop a different type of weapon. They have clearly fought wars against multiple species with varying technologies." Kethavar felt his stomach twist with dread. "You are saying they are not just warriors, but experienced warriors who have defeated many other species?" "The evidence suggests exactly that, Commander. No peaceful species would develop such comprehensive defensive systems unless they had faced every possible type of attack. They have fought plasma weapons, kinetic weapons, energy beams, and probably things we cannot even imagine." The hours passed slowly as the three scout ships made their way home, carrying news that would change everything. Behind them in the Kepler 442 system, the USS Liberty continued its peaceful mission, completely unaware of the panic they had accidentally created. When the Zephyrian ships finally reached their home system, they were met by an escort of defensive vessels that guided them directly to the orbital platform, where the High Council maintained their chambers. Elder Simthara, the eldest and wisest of the Zephyrian leaders, waited for them with barely concealed anxiety. The council chamber was a beautiful space filled with crystalline structures that caught and reflected light in peaceful patterns. Normally, the chamber promoted calm and thoughtful discussion. Today it became the site of the most frightening briefing in Zephyrian history. Commander Kethavar stood before the assembled council members and activated the holographic display that would show them everything his crew had recorded. "Honored elders, what I am about to show you will challenge everything we thought we knew about the galaxy." The first images of the USS Liberty appeared in the center of the chamber, and several council members gasped audibly at the sight. The human warship hung in space like a mechanical predator, its angular lines and weapon-studded hull speaking of violence and conquest. "This vessel is over 2,000 meters in length," Kethvar reported, his voice steady despite his inner fear. "It carries enough firepower to destroy entire fleets, and armor thick enough to withstand planet-cracking weapons." Elder Simthara leaned forward in her chair, her ancient eyes studying every detail of the human ship. "How many crew members would such a vessel require?" "Based on the size and complexity, I estimate between 5 and 10,000 beings," replied Science Officer Yulthara. "This is not just a ship, it is a mobile fortress designed to project power across vast distances." The council watched in horrified silence as the recording showed the human weapons test. When the asteroid disappeared in a flash of superheated plasma, several elders cried out in dismay. Council member Zorkan, a veteran of their species' only previous military conflict centuries ago, stood up from his seat with his face pale. "Honored elders, I have seen war before, but never anything like this," he said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "These humans have weaponized forces that we use for peaceful energy production. They have turned the power of stars into tools of destruction. What are your recommendations, Commander Kethvar?" asked Elder Simthara, though her voice suggested she already feared the answer. "We must assume that this vessel is the advanced scout for a larger invasion force," Kethvar replied grimly. "A species that builds ships like this does not stop with just one. They are probably already planning to conquer our territory." The chamber erupted in frightened discussions as council members tried to process this information. Elder Simthara called for order, her crystalline staff ringing against the floor to restore silence. "Council member Zorkan, you have military experience that the rest of us lack. What would you recommend in this situation?" Zorkan stood again, his shoulders straight despite his advanced age. "We must mobilize every ship we have and call upon our allies to do the same. If these humans are planning an invasion, our only hope is to present such a strong defense that they decide to look elsewhere for conquest." "How long would such a mobilization take?" asked Elder Simthara. "The Zephyrian Defense Confederation includes 12 peaceful species with a combined fleet of over 300 vessels. If we begin immediately, we could have the entire fleet assembled within 1 week." "But Elder Simthara," interrupted Council Member Yeldara, "we have no proof that these humans mean us harm." "Perhaps this is all a misunderstanding." Zorkan activated the recording again, showing the moment when the human weapons obliterated the asteroid. "Council Member Yeldara, this is not the behavior of a peaceful species. No one builds weapons like this for defense alone." The debate continued for hours, but eventually, fear won over hope. The High Council voted unanimously to mobilize the Defense Confederation and prepare for what they believed would be an invasion by the most dangerous species they had ever encountered. Within days, the call went out across 12 star systems. Peaceful traders, scientific vessels, and exploration ships were hastily fitted with whatever weapons could be found. Transport ships became troop carriers, and research stations were converted into military outposts. An entire region of the galaxy began preparing for a war that existed only in their frightened imaginations. Admiral Zorkan took command of the growing fleet from his flagship, a converted colony ship that had been turned into a mobile command center. He studied the tactical data about the human vessel and tried to develop strategies that might work against such overwhelming firepower. "Analysis suggests that their main weakness might be their size," he told his staff officers during one of their planning sessions. "A ship that large cannot be very maneuverable. If we can surround them with enough vessels, we might be able to overwhelm their defenses." But even as he said this, Zorkan knew they were probably doomed. The human weapons could destroy their largest ships with single shots, and their armor could probably withstand anything the Confederation could throw at them. They were preparing to fight a war they could not possibly win, but honor demanded that they try. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Liberty, Captain Jake Morrison received new orders from Earth Command. Intelligence Director Colonel Sam Parker had analyzed the alien technology recovered during the rescue operation and determined that these beings posed no threat to humanity. The Liberty was ordered to remain in the system and attempt to establish peaceful communication with any other alien vessels they might encounter. Morrison had no idea that his peaceful exploration ship was being viewed as the spearhead. of an invasion fleet, or that hundreds of alien vessels were already moving toward his position with the desperate intention of stopping a war before it could begin. The Zephyrian Defense Confederation fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, like a swarm of angry insects. 300 vessels of different sizes and designs spread out in a massive formation that stretched across thousands of kilometers of space. Admiral Zorkon stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the tactical display that showed the human warship still hanging motionless near the fourth planet. All ships report ready for battle. Admiral, announced his communications officer. The fleet included everything from massive colony ships hastily converted into battleships to tiny scout vessels armed with mining lasers. It was the largest military force the peaceful species had ever assembled, and probably the last one they would ever need. Signal the fleet to advance in defensive formation, Zorkon ordered, his voice heavy with the weight of responsibility. Maintain maximum weapons range and be prepared for immediate retreat if the human vessel shows any sign of aggression. Aboard the USS Liberty, Captain Jake Morrison watched his tactical display with growing amazement as more and more alien ships appeared on his sensors. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes worked frantically at her station, trying to count the incoming vessels and assess their capabilities. Captain, I count at least 300 ships in various configurations, Hayes reported, her voice tight with concentration. Most appear to be civilian vessels that have been modified with weapons. But there are some dedicated military designs as well. Dr. Elena Rodriguez moved to the science station, where Chief Analyst Gary Thompson was running detailed scans of the alien fleet. Gary, what can you tell me about their technology levels? It is fascinating, Doctor, Thompson replied, his fingers dancing across his controls. Their ships use some kind of biomechanical technology that I have never seen before. The power signatures suggest they are quite advanced in some areas, but their weapons appear to be relatively primitive. Captain Morrison studied the tactical situation with the calm professionalism that had made him one of Earth's most respected exploration captains. Commander Hayes, analysis of threat level? Hayes ran the numbers through her combat computer and shook her head in confusion. Sir, despite their overwhelming numbers, the combined firepower of that entire fleet would barely scratch our hull plating. Their weapons appear to be designed for mining operations and small-scale defense, not ship-to-ship combat. Then why are they here in such numbers? Morrison wondered aloud. Dr. Rodriguez suddenly looked up from her analysis with understanding dawning in her eyes. Captain, I think they are afraid of us. Their formation is defensive, not aggressive. They are trying to protect themselves from what they perceive as a threat. Meanwhile, Admiral Zorkon studied his own tactical readings with growing despair. The human warship showed no signs of concern despite being outnumbered 300 to 1. Its weapons remained powered but not targeted, and its massive bulk seemed to radiate confidence and superiority. Admiral, should we open communications? Asked his tactical officer nervously. Not yet, Zorkon replied. Let them make the first move. If they are planning to attack, I want to know their intentions before we reveal our position. Dr. Rodriguez worked with communications specialist Ryan Mitchell to decode the alien language patterns they had detected during the previous encounter. Using the ship's advanced artificial intelligence systems, they began to piece together basic communication protocols. Captain, I think I can establish basic communication with the alien fleet, Rodriguez announced after hours of intensive work. Their language uses musical tones and harmonic frequencies, but the underlying mathematical structure is similar to our own. Do it, Doctor. But be very careful with your word choices. We do not want to accidentally start a war. The first message from the Liberty was simple and direct, transmitted in carefully constructed harmonic patterns that the Zephyrians could understand. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Liberty. We come in peace and wish to establish friendly communication with your species. Admiral Zorkon nearly fell from his command chair when the translation appeared on his screen. They claimed to come in peace? After we saw them destroy an asteroid with weapons that could crack planets? Perhaps it is some kind of psychological warfare, suggested his tactical officer. They want us to lower our guard before they attack. But Science Officer Yilthara, who had been studying the human ship since their arrival, noticed something that changed everything. Admiral, I am detecting something very strange about the human vessel. There are sections of the hull that appear to be retracting, revealing transparent areas underneath. Transparent areas? Zorkan activated his long-range visual sensors and focused them on the Liberty. What he saw made his mind struggle to process the information. The massive human warship was opening up like a flower, revealing decks filled with gardens, recreational areas, and what appeared to be families walking around in peaceful civilian clothing. Children could be seen playing in observation lounges while their parents watched the stars. Scientists worked in laboratories filled with research equipment rather than weapons. The ship was not just a military vessel. It was a mobile city carrying thousands of non-combatant civilians. "By the ancient stars," whispered Zorkan. "What kind of warriors bring their families to battle?" Dr. Rodriguez continued her communications efforts, and with each exchange, the truth became clearer. She transmitted samples of human art, music, and literature, all carefully translated into harmonic patterns that spoke of beauty, exploration, and peaceful discovery rather than conquest and war. "Admiral," Science Officer Yilthara said quietly, "I believe we have made a terrible mistake. These humans are not warriors, they are explorers, just like us." The breakthrough came when Captain Morrison ordered the Liberty to completely power down all weapon systems and transmit a detailed explanation of their mission in the Kepler 442 system. The message explained that they were conducting scientific research and peaceful exploration, and that their weapons were purely defensive measures designed to protect civilians during long journeys through dangerous regions of space. Admiral Zorkan read the translation 3 times before he finally accepted what his eyes were telling him. The humans had built their ships large and heavily armed, not because they were conquerors, but because they were explorers who refused to leave anyone behind when they ventured into the unknown. Their weapons were not tools of aggression, but shields to protect the innocent. The realization hit the Zephyrian commander like a physical blow. They had mobilized their entire civilization to fight against a species that was probably more peaceful than they were. The humans had simply chosen a different path to the stars, one that prioritized survival and protection over elegant efficiency. "All ships, stand down from combat readiness," Zorkan ordered, his voice filled with shame and relief. "Prepare for peaceful first contact protocols." The meeting that followed between Admiral Zorkan and Captain Morrison took place aboard the Liberty in one of the ship's beautiful observation lounges. The Zephyrian admiral was amazed to find himself surrounded by families, scientists, and children who looked at him with curiosity rather than fear. "We owe you an apology, Captain Morrison," Zorkan said through the translation equipment that Dr. Rodriguez had perfected. "We misunderstood your intentions and nearly started a war based on our own fears." Morrison smiled and gestured toward the stars visible through the transparent aluminum windows. "No apology necessary, Admiral. The universe is a big and sometimes frightening place. It is natural to be cautious when encountering the unknown." As the two commanders talked, children from both species played together under the watchful eyes of their parents. Scientists shared data and compared notes on their different approaches to exploration. The fear and misunderstanding that had brought them to the brink of war melted away in the face of genuine friendship and mutual respect. Elder Simthara arrived aboard the Liberty 3 days later to witness the signing of the first treaty between their species. As she watched human and Zephyrian children laughing together in the ship's gardens, she reflected on how easily fear could be transformed into friendship when people took the time to truly understand each other. The Liberty continued its mission with a full complement of Zephyrian scientists aboard, while Admiral Zorkan returned home to tell his people about the remarkable species that protected their families with weapons that could destroy worlds, yet chose instead to use their strength to build a better future among the stars.